So once you've created your collage, mixed your colors, and then put down the basic color shapes with a palette knife, in this case I'm working in oil, the next step is to nuance it a little bit. So the whole beauty of working with a palette knife is that you tend to not be seduced by blending, but you can start to bring together certain areas of color, sort of joining them a little bit. So for instance, if I'm working between this sort of mid-green and this dark green, right now there's a pretty hard edge, but I can come in, and I'll bring it a little closer, I can come in with a palette knife and just start to knit it a little bit. I'm not completely blending all of these pieces together. I'm not making this color and this color become a new color, but I am just sort of tickling the edge. I call it like zipping it together a little bit, and that can make some soft effects and make it feel just a little bit more related in a way. So I'm just tickling the edges, I'm blending them together just a little bit if that's an effect you like. You can also really keep it hard edge, that's also a possibility. So painting often has a combination of hard edge and soft edge. The other question is the topography of this surface. So texture, you know, if you're somebody who tends to use very little paint, using a palette knife really encourages you to use more. And I tend to build the texture higher up front in the foreground of the picture and let it get thinner as it goes back in space. So right now everything on this painting is more or less the same thickness because I was just putting down the colors. But I often feel like I'm not really painting until everything's down there and then I can start playing with it a little bit. So in this foreground area, right now it's rather flatly painted, but I can come in and I can even adjust the color just a little bit. I might make it a little bit warmer because it's up in the foreground. And I can load up my palette knife again, and in this case I'm putting a little more pigment on there. And I can come in and I can sweep it across the surface, maybe even mimicking the texture of grass a little bit. So I'll try to get this in the raking light a little bit more. So I can come in and I can start to build texture in the foreground by creating these sweeping strokes to the knife. And sometimes I'll start to do that up front and then let things get thinner as it goes back into space. And that really helps to create the illusion of depth. Another thing you can do with the knife is you can take the edge of it and load the edge up with pigment, again, like that, just a little bit of it, and you can come into some areas that might be a little bit smaller, a little bit harder to reach. For instance, these vertical trees, I can come in and just sort of lay the knife edge down, just press it down along the edge of something I want to be a little sharper, a little straighter, and you can see how slowly I can start to create a little bit more sense of refinement that way. So I can come back and forth using the edge of the knife to create that effect. Another thing that I like to do sometimes when I'm working with thicker paint is I'll come in and I'll actually take a pencil and draw in a little bit. So, you know, this is my own aesthetic, but, you know, I kind of like to sort of loosen things up a little bit, maybe where painting meets drawing, and taking the areas also, you can use the tip of the knife and you can come in and you can create textures by just scoring a little bit. That's another way to knit things together. You can sort of score things with a knife and create more textures that way. So you can build texture by adding paint, like I did in this area. You can also build textures by scraping in, and then you can also draw into the picture as well. So these are some things, once you have all the colors down, that you can start to do to create a sense of unity and energy. One thing that I try not to do is, let's say you start to blend a bit and then suddenly you end up with an area, let's say, I mean, I love this shape against that shape, but let's say you overblend it. This is what I won't do, but I'm going to show you for the sake of, let's say you come in and you start blending everything together and it just turns into sort of you lose the structure. So another beautiful thing with the knife is you can actually just scrape it it down again. You can scrape away. You can see how when I scrape away the paint here, I'm actually re-revealing the drawing. And then I can come in with those colors that I used before and just bring those shapes back. So I can come in on top of it, I can bring it around, no problem. And then I can bring in that yellow again, right up to the edge. And so you can scrape things down. You can scrape things down, you can bring things back. It's a very, very forgiving situation. And in the distance here, you know, where the sky meets the trees, I might go in and actually create a little, not so many hard edges, just sort of softer edges because it's in the distance. And those softer edges will help me create the illusion of depth. So this is all available to you working with a palette knife, building texture, putting in clean color shapes. It's your choice how much you want to blend and how much you want to nuance. I really love working in this way with these clean color shapes, and it really creates a painting with a sculptural quality and very clean color.